Hi everyone, my name is Veer, and as of tomorrow, I will be a trainee solicitor at a city law firm. Back in 2020, I was in the position that I'm sure a lot of you find yourselves in now, application season approaching, and um, very keen to get a training contract as soon as possible. So I started preparing to apply for training contracts in around September 2020. Uh, but before then, there were a number of things which I did to prepare myself for the application season. And the following year, in June 2021, I was successful in gaining two training contracts. So I wanted to go through some of the actions that I took to prepare myself for the application season. So I think my first tip and my first action that I took was to really deeply think about myself. That sounds a bit self indulgent, but it was really, really important to know myself before I started putting pen to paper or typing my applications. So, really, here I'm referring to a couple of key things that I really kind of wanted to find out about myself and clarify before deciding which types of firms I wanted to apply to and how I was going to put myself across in the best way possible. So, this meant thinking really carefully about my interests and my skills and all of the experiences I'd had. I was a career changer, or I am a career changer, so I've had a range of experiences, but it was really about thinking carefully about those experiences and finding out why I was applying to be a lawyer, essentially. So this involved thinking about my strengths. What were my really strong pull factors that would interest law firms and would make me write a compelling application, but also what were my gaps. So what are the things perhaps that you need to work on to make sure that your application is as strong as possible. So, for example, do you need to get some additional work experience? Do you need to work on your commercial awareness? Do you need to find out a little bit more about the different types of law firms and what they do? So, really thinking about your strengths and your areas that you might want to develop. And I think it's also a good time now to start thinking about some examples for the key competencies that you hear about all the time. So, teamwork, communication, attention to detail, working under pressure, and so on. So, before you start thinking about writing applications, really think carefully about how you can match your experiences up to some of these key competencies. And there are more than that, these are just some examples that I can think of at the top of my head. In my case, I was a teacher before I decided to switch careers to law. And here, obviously, it's paramount to have very clear communication skills. So I had to think of some very specific examples of where I'd made a difference by using my communication skills and how that might translate to a career in law. Ultimately, it all comes down to you thinking about why law is right for you and why you're the right person to be a trainee solicitor for a particular firm or type of firm. And this links to my next point really. You really need to know the market before you start thinking about applying. So this really entails learning about the different types of firms, and I use Chambers Student a lot for this. They have some really great profiles for different law firms, and really did they also think about why a particular type of firm or why a particular individual firm appeals to you. So what about it makes it the right place for you to work? And also thinking carefully about the different practice areas. So we often talk about city law firms, but in fact, within that group of law firms, there is a lot of variety. So some law firms have strengths in insurance, for example, and other law firms are much more contentious and disputes focused. So it's really important to know A, what those different practice areas do, but B, also what different firms do and what their strengths are. Um, and I think my third point is start building your commercial awareness before the application season starts. Slow and steady wins the race. So, reading an article or two before an interview is really not enough. You need to engage with it fully and with the commercial world well in advance of any applications and interviews. So reading a range of newspapers and different articles is very important, but also thinking critically about the implications of a particular trend or a news story. And if you're not so keen on reading a broadsheet such as the FT, there are various resources such as Watson's Daily, which break down important news stories daily, as the name suggests, into bite-sized bits of information, which is much more easy to digest. I think I would also pick a few topics that interest you and follow these over a period of time. So it's like I said, it's not enough to read one article on a particular topic or area of interest. You do need to build up layers of knowledge, and this only happens if you start early. And you can't read everything, so picking a few topics that interest you is really, really important. And finally, with regards to commercial awareness, doing rather than just reading is very important. So perhaps find a group of friends to discuss recent news developments with, who are also going for the same types of jobs in the city. It doesn't have to be lawyers. It can be anyone who's looking for a city job where commercial awareness is important. And a shameless plug here, I'm starting a new initiative called Commercial Cafe, where we will meet weekly to discuss recent news developments. So check out my page on LinkedIn and Instagram and see if it's something that you might be interested in. I also wrote for a commercial awareness website when I was applying for law firms, and this really helped me to engage more deeply with the news and think critically about what I was reading rather than just passively reading it. Fourth tip would be to craft your story. So this kind of links to point one. How did you get to where you are? What drives you? What experiences and skills will you bring to the role of trainee solicitor? So just some things to think about before you start making the application, so you really know how to craft a convincing answer to those types of questions that ask you about your motivations for a legal career. And finally, make a plan. So think about whether you want to apply for vacation schemes or training contracts or both, and also note down when those deadlines are. So I've got a template that I used to make a note of all of this information, which is shared in the description to this video below, but you can also make your own. I think it's really important for you to have in your mind and written down when those deadlines are, so you can be fully prepared to make the most of the applications that you're writing and have a schedule for writing them. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope it was useful. If you did find it useful, please subscribe to my page and also follow me on LinkedIn and Instagram. I've shared the links for both of these in the description below.